Hi, everybody. I'm Rosie Acosta. I'm a yoga and meditation teacher and author of You Are Radically Loved. I'm so excited to be here with Chase today on Ever Forward Radio. And today we're going to talk about radical wisdom. We're going to talk about different ways to anchor into your own deep sense of wisdom and empowerment. We talk about different stories in the book that I just wrote. We go into the ego. We talk about the eternal presence of love, and so many more things. I can't wait for you to check this episode out.
3, 2, 1.
A few months ago, we were out with some new friends, and this guy just like stopped in the middle of the street and stared down. We're in Santa Monica somewhere. He just looked around. And was like, God, LA sucks. I love it. And I was like, I don't think no truer description of LA has ever been said.
Totally.
It's just this constant dichotomy of fuck you, I love you. Fuck you, I love you.
It literally is. This is terrible. Are we recording? Because I don't know that I want this. Oh, we are?
Red light means it's off, right?
Oh, that's fine. But I would always tell Tori, like...
This might just be for my fun use.
Oh, I don't care. That's fine. But it's interesting because I would always say that LA is like... Everything is feminine, right? So I always say her, you know? I always say that LA is like the abusive girlfriend. Like you're in that abusive relationship where you like obsessively love her.
Yeah.
But she doesn't always treat you well.
Yeah.
But you're still like
always
obsessed.
Come crawling back.
Yeah, totally. Every single time. And I would compare Portland as like the sweet girl next door, like the one that you're like, I'm going to marry this girl one day, you know, like she's consistent and sweet and nice. And LA is like the total opposite. You know, that's the comparison. It's still yet to be determined which one I will stay with.
Well, I'm going to try to make a really smooth transition here. Okay. Is that radical love, Rosie?
That is radical love. That is
All
radical love. You know, what's interesting is that I was thinking, you know, on my way here, I was just remembering how we connected, and I was on the tour. I was on the Yoga Journal tour, and
I just missed you by like a day, I think, in Washington, D.C.
Yes.
I was like, no shit, she's coming here, and I literally just left.
Yeah. And oh my God, it was so cool to be able to, you know, start this process of connecting with other podcasters because, like at that point I'd already been podcasting, but it wasn't necessarily as consistent as I would have wanted it to be. And I had just started connecting with other podcasters, and it's just so interesting when you meet people and, you know, you connect and it's fun and you have a great conversation and you move on. But for some reason, like there was just this instant soul recognition connection with you, you know, maybe
and I think
like,
the Chewy thing helped a little bit too.
Yeah, the Chewy thing helped for sure. Oh my, well, it's his anniversary of his, It was today, a year ago.
No what, really?
Yeah, I know.
Damn.
R.I.P.
See, there's more LA Universe stuff happening.
It's so bizarre.
Damn, that's wild. Okay.
Yeah. Well, here we are.
So one of my longest running podcast homies, one of the first shows I discovered when I was getting started with Ever Forward and Radically Loved was moving and grooving. And I'll never forget this. It was like, I think contacting you, I found you on Instagram or something. And then I was asking to come on my show, but just like you being you was like, yeah, absolutely. I would love to have you on Radically Love. Let's do it. Like you didn't even see the question in there of what I was asking you. You were just looking at me and just immediately like took me in. And so I was like, cool. Yeah, I would love to. Yeah. Also, will you still come on my show?
Yeah, you're like, yes, but can you come on my show? Yeah.
And that's, I guess was my first introduction to radical love. It was just this constant opening up your heart space for people and new things.
Yeah. Well, I think Ever Forward is so much of the same ethos as Radically Loved. And I was so inspired by you and your story. And I mean, look at what you've created. I mean, this is awesome, you know, to be able to see it from how we started, right?
My tiny closet in my 1-bedroom apartment in DC where I was not even using the microphone correctly.
No, I know, same.
I was fucking up left and right.
It was so like old. I think, and we did it over the phone, right? Or did we did it via Zoom? I can't remember.
Might have been Zoom.
Or Skype.
Yeah. It was Skype.
I think it was Skype. Yeah. And God, we've come a long way. We've come a
Started
long
from the bottom,
way.
now we're here, right?
That's right. That's right. Yeah, but the whole idea of ever forward, I mean, I think it actually was so, it made such a deep impact, you know, just you and your story and the story of you and your dad and the sort of ethos that brought you here, you know, and your path. Like, to me, everybody has that hero's journey, right? That story, that anchor of something that we learned when we were young that's really kept us fueled to go forward. There's this idea that we all have a purpose, right? That we all have this path that we're designed to move through. And I really feel like when I meet people that are on that path, it's so inspiring to me because you feel it, right?
Yeah. It's like immediate.
Yes, there's a resonance there. You can anchor into that. Same thing as when you meet somebody that is clearly not on their path, that they're feeling really stuck and confused, or they're going through the motions of life. They're stuck in the mundanity of their world. We all go through that. That's just part of art, right?
Yeah. The dichotomy of being human.
Exactly. Yeah. And somebody just told me, I was doing some interviews the other day, and oh my God, I think Alex Benayan was saying that somebody else had told him, if you're not questioning your life and what you're doing with your life, every 10 years you're doing something wrong.
10 years, damn. I feel like every 10 months.
Same. I'm like, God, 10 years.
How do I stretch it out that long? Yeah, all right.
I'm like, for me, it happens like every 2 years.
Yeah,
I'm just like, why are we here? What are we doing?
Hell, it's why my wife and I move so much. I swear, you know, in LA, I mean, for a few reasons against like not our own choice, 3 years now, we've had 5 addresses.
Wow.
Like little gypsy people.
Yeah, no, you're moving around a lot. I feel like.
I like change.
But that's good. Yeah. You know, like I think it's important for you to dip your toe in and feel it out. And especially when you're to me, it's like if you're still in the same area, you're just exploring to see what you like. I mean, we have as well. I mean, Tori and I have moved around a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, in LA, just like maybe 3 or 4 times, but you know, we lived in Portland for like, well, I lived there for 4 years. He lived there for 3 because he ended up moving back because he couldn't hack the winter, even though he's from there. Side note, random.
You know, I go back to the East Coast now. I mean, it's below 70 degrees. I'm freezing. So I've lost all tolerance. I'm ashamed to admit that I'm like this little Southern Virginia boy who is used to feet of snow in the winter. And now I'm like,
you're like, it's so cold.
I'm a Nancy boy.
Yeah. Same Z's. Yeah.
It's funny that it's very appropriate that you're kind of describing radical love and our beginning of our relationship and friendship over the years in the way that you did, because again, we're here to talk about your new book. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And
first interview for the book.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, shucks. All right. Don't mess it up, Chase. Don't mess it up. And you shared with me a section. I don't know if this was specific for me or just kind of where you were when you were kind of thinking about it, but radical wisdom. And as I was kind of combing through the section there, it like everything, all those micro sections, if you will, I was just like, this is me. This has been my journey. This has been my journey. This has been my journey. So if it was intentional, I'll just say it was. Thank you. And if not, it was just, again, the universe working in our favor. In the beginning, you talk about ignorance is bliss and the whole concept of ignorance as we go through our journey and kind of the friction that we have with that and the veil that is there that for some of us, for a lot of us, it takes too long to kind of pull on that. Can you walk us through what do you mean by ignorance is bliss and the path to radical wisdom?
Yeah. And I think that everything happens for I'll come back to that. Everything happens for a reason. Everything doesn't happen for a reason. Side note, we'll come back. But, you know, I talk about the story of when I was a teenager and I ditched school, which is something I did pretty often. I took the metro, the bus to Sunset, and I was just walking on Sunset, and I saw what is it? It
was the Viper Room.
No, it was the whiskey. The Whiskey a Go-Go.
Which another thing stood out to me right there. I used to live on San Vicente, literally right there.
That is right there.
I moved a couple months ago, but literally right there. I was reading that section. I was like, holy shit, Rosie. Are you in my diary?
I was channeling you. I was like, what does Chase need to hear right
I live
this
right
second?
there in San Vicente, just below Whiskey a Go-Go.
Yeah, well, and where they announce the bands that are coming up, it said, in quotes, ignorance is bliss. And as a teenager, you're rebelling against the system, and you're sort of just questioning everything that has been embedded into your unconscious mind, and you're trying to, for me anyway, anything that I grew up, any structure that I grew up knowing, or that was sort of shoved down my throat, I was like, no, I don't want to do this. I want to be Rage Against the Machine, and I'm going to go against the grain.
Great band,
right?
by the way.
They get a little mention in the book too.
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah.
So that was so much a part of my, I don't know, like mental belief system. And in not in the sense of, oh, I want to bury my head in the sand. But to me, it was more, okay, like, in what ways am I being blind to what is present?
Would you say, was that your kind of first question for yourself? Was that your kind of first sense of awareness moment kind of thing?
Yeah, I would say it was one of the few, because I was, I grew up in an environment where it was extremely chaotic. It was the early 90s. It was during the LA riots. There was a lot of gang violence. We lived in a neighborhood that was, there was sirens every day, a couple of times a day.
You went through, if memory serves, several drive-bys.
Yeah, there was a handful of drive-bys. I've seen somebody get shot. I've seen somebody get stabbed. Like, it was pretty a gnarly experience. And to be able to see that and see the almost numbing of an environment and a neighborhood, because this is not an anomaly, right? When you grow up in an environment like that, much like growing up in a war-torn country, you just don't know the difference.
It unfortunately is the norm.
Right.
Yeah.
And so your body just begins to have this cognitive dissonance where you're having an experience of something traumatic happen, but your environment is saying this is normal. Mm-hmm. So there's this disconnection that happens. And so for me, seeing that sign of ignorance is bliss, I didn't want to ignore it anymore. I felt like I'd been ignoring so much of my life that didn't feel in alignment. Mm-hmm. And so it was sort of this sign, it literally was a sign that said, pay attention, like ignorance is not bliss. You have to do the opposite. How can you bring more awareness to your life to bring you into the state of integration so that you can begin to feel and really feel empowered and embody your life? Because when you grow up in a situation like that, you either end up a product of your environment, which I was going down the path, and I talk about it in the book about how I got arrested and I, had to go to court, and I had to make a decision whether I decided to, get my act together or keep going down the path that so many of my other friends and neighbors and family members had gone down, which would have been the easier thing to do.
And I was going to say, it would have been the normal for you, because that path didn't stand out as not even the wrong or the bad path. It was just what you would have known to be true.
Right. And, a lot of the families that we grew up around, they're, a lot of immigrant families. I'm first generation Mexican American. So it's also that, my parents really worked hard to give us a better life. Mm-hmm. But the issue that happens when you have these parents of these growing adolescents, they're not around. So I always call it the Lord of the Flies, right? Like there was just so many children just like out, like doing bad things. And
because the parents are away.
Because the parents are away.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so there's nobody to really give the structure of, don't go try and steal a car. Don't go steal things from the liquor store.
Stop stabbing people.
Yes,
Like,
exactly.
Geez, wow.
And a lot of these kids just wanting attention is what kids need. And
looking for love.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The other issue was in this experience, me having to make a decision and essentially make the decision of spurning myself from the tribe was really hard. You know, I tried to explain this to my mom as I was writing the book, just trying to get timelines and making sure that my memory was, sometimes we remember things and it's not the way, you know?
Yeah.
So I had contact with a lot of my family members just to recall certain incidents to make sure that I was getting the timelines right. But I was telling my mom, she never realized how difficult it was to sort of make the change of extracting myself from my childhood friends, because they were essentially leading me down the wrong path, and how impactful that is for young kids. You hear a lot of adults, and my grandmother, my aunts would say, like, just stop hanging out with those kids. Like, just stop, just don't do bad things. And it's really hard. I mean, it's really hard. Essentially, you're telling this, what is our biggest fear is to be exiled from your tribe. And that's essentially what you have to do. You're
excommunicating yourself by doing this. You're making the decision that you think is in the right direction for your life, but at the same time, you're severing a tie, if not the only tie, to what you know to be true.
And your security. And at that time, I mean, there's, you've got gangs in school. It's not just, it's
not just cliques.
Yeah, it's not just cliques. You're literally like going down neighborhoods that are, what is it? Like they are sort of rival gangs. Mm-hmm. So one of the other things that I was talking to her about that was interesting, and I also write about this in the book, that I was like a goth kid. That was my solution to not being like, affiliated with any gang. It was like, okay, I will just become a goth kid.
What's the neutral?
Yeah, what's the neutral?
Exactly.
So it's like wearing black all the time. I cut my hair short, and I dyed it black, and I like wore Misfits shirts, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna be the weirdo. I'd rather be the weirdo than have to choose between two different rival gangs with friends in both sides that I grew up with. Wow. And so it was the sort of neutral ground for me to go down. And I think finally now, like, what is it, like 20, 30, 20 years later plus,
carry the 12.
I'm like, 20 plus years later, explaining this to my mom, and she never understood that. She never thought about, oh, wow, like, how was that for you? Like, was that very difficult for you to reconcile, to have to make that choice? And yeah, it was hard. It was really hard. It was really severely difficult at that time, when you're a teenager and you're trying to figure out who you are, and you're trying to make sense of, having panic attacks and having insomnia, and figuring out, oh, right, like most people don't see somebody get stabbed.
I was going to say, and for you, also add on the fact that you're trying to stay alive some days, literally.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, so that was the catalyst that helped open the door to exploring different avenues and connecting to, like a higher power, a higher being. And to me, it was during that time that I started to learn about meditation. I started to learn more about different modalities, because I just felt like if I didn't do something, I didn't really see a life past 18.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. It was that immediate.
Oh yeah. I just didn't, I didn't understand why we were here. And I didn't understand what the purpose was. And yeah. And even saying it now, like the thought of it freaks me out. Even just remembering, wow, like I was at that point. And I know a lot of teenagers go through this. I mean, especially now, there's so much more discussion around mental health and suicide prevention, and talking to, kids from the age we are now, explaining like this is something that a lot of people go through, and sort of removing the stigma of that, I think is huge, because it's difficult when you have a situation where children are growing up and they're having a sort of existential crisis, and especially somebody that grows up seeing a lot of what I would consider, I'm also a recovering Catholic, something I also talk about in the book. So there's this idea that hell is something that happens when you're bad. Is something that happens when you're a sinner or you do bad things.
Southern Baptist in me can also validate that.
Right.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Recovering Southern Baptist. I guess.
Right. Yeah, I know. I'm always like recovering Catholic. But if you are living your life and your family's living their life as a good Christian or a good Catholic, and there's still a lot of shit going down, what are you meant to believe then? It's like you're watching the news, and my family, bless them, I say this.
Bless their little hearts.
I know. I love
hearts.
you all. But the fact that they would watch the Spanish news, which is like the worst type of graphical. Yeah. They're just like, they'll show the most graphic, bloody scenes.
Mira.
Yeah, exactly. Mira. Yeah, mira. This
Like,
is what
don't
happens.
mira.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, you can watch people like die on the street, but when there's somebody that's naked, close your eyes. It's like, no.
What a confusing signal.
Right? It's like they're kissing, close your eyes. I'm like, what? But I can see somebody get like pummeled to death. Anyway, but there's that cognitive dissonance I was talking about, right? Where you're growing up in this environment that is extremely chaotic, and you're meant to believe in a higher power. You're meant to believe that there is something bigger when there is no proof of it.
Wow. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Not to go too far down a rabbit hole, but that's a big thing that I struggled with growing up. I grew up in a religious household, like I said, Southern Baptist, and I even went for middle school, like halfway through 8th grade, I got pulled from one school and into this private Christian school, and wound up loving it. Amazing education, amazing friendships, but there was always this thing of just like, where's the proof kind of thing? Where's the proof? It's like, I'm not a non-believer, but I just saw it in the words and emotions and actions of all these other amazing people that I still love dearly. And they just like, they got it. Like the belief is there, the proof is there. And for me, it was always just like this one little missing link that still kind of even, haunts me is not the right word, but I still kind of carry that concept with me in a lot of things in my life. Of course, I guess that's what I get for going and studying, the health sciences.
Right.
But I'm like, okay, anecdotal is cool. I believe in belief, but I need some kind of proof to like anchor this kind of thing down.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that it's valid, and it's not a lot to ask. And I'm not saying proof like, okay, I need somebody to come prove to me. I wouldn't necessarily say seeing is believing. This is another story I talk about in the book when I was taking my catechism classes, and I essentially got kicked out because I didn't see God's hand come down to touch the Eucharist, and I questioned that authority. So the beginning of the book is it's broken into 3 parts: mind, body, and spirit, because I believe we need all of those.
Absolutely. Yeah.
To integrate in order for us to feel the unification, to feel radically loved, whatever those look like for you. And I really go into that in the book to empower people to have their own spiritual path, their own spiritual journey. But having that experience was teaching me, you have to be a certain way. You have to believe certain things in order for you to have that grace of God, or for you to be able to have a spiritual practice. And that can be extremely discouraging for anybody to, have a spiritual practice. We have these experiences where we're conditioned to believe a certain thing, a God or a dogma, any type of religion, or we won't get the benefits of going to heaven or having a good life, etc. And it's not going to be the same for everybody. And I really feel that the people that have that questioning should really heed that call and really acknowledge that maybe that isn't for you. Maybe that's not the way, or maybe you need to go through a different type of process. And fortunately, and if you're still in that process, like I'd love to hear more about your own process in finding that connection. For me, it was not necessarily that I didn't believe in God in the sense of there's this man with a beard that's like, the picture that's been painted exactly across the ages. Yeah. To me, it was something bigger than that. I felt this force and this energy, even when I was going through really difficult times, or I did experience really heavy things and loss, grief, death. There was still this resonating anchor that I felt. And to me, it was that it didn't have a name. It wasn't something that I could even put into words. It was just there. And a lot of the times people ask me, what was it that led you to this path? What was it that helped get you from point A to point B? How did you manage that in your life? And I still don't know. I would revert back to this life force, this energy that is an anchor that feels complete and integrated and unstruck by anything. Wow. And so that is sort of where the best description of it is radical love, right? It's just this rooted, completely untouchable anchor point that I will say when I'm having my moments of doubt and I'm having an existential crisis and I'm seeing the pain of the world, and I'm such an empathetic person. I'm like a bleeding heart, I can, and especially for animals or any, like older people or little kids, like I am such a bleeding heart. I want to just love everybody so much. And I think that is part of that anchoring that I have, and I can always revert to so long as I am practicing that, because there are moments where I can't access that. And I'm in my neuroses of being an A-type, overly analytical person because of the way I was raised. So because of the way I was raised, right, I wanted to do everything scientific, everything opposite. Nope, I want to disprove this. And I want to know exactly why my body feels so good when I'm meditating. I want to know exactly why my body feels so good when I do prayer. I want to know what is happening physiologically so that I can then anchor into that feeling that is unexplainable. So much of yoga is the study of paradoxes. And I said earlier, I don't know if we were recording yet or not, but I'm an extremely paradoxical person because to me, that's the balance. We need the balance. We need to have that truth. That is the only consistent truth, that change is constant, impermanence is inevitable. And the only thing that we can anchor into is radical love, right? So I think that the more that we continue to acknowledge these different ideas, the easier it is for us to go on our life's journey and go on our path and feel supported to move through our own healing journey.
You also talk about what kind of, you say, getting in your own paradoxical way. Is that what you're talking about in the book when you're describing the ego work? Or is that just another component that we need to be aware of, another layer we need to peel back? Yeah, I think it's both. I think it's both. I think us working with, I talk about the afflictions of the mind. So in yoga, specifically in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, there are 5 afflictions of the mind, and these 5 afflictions are what cause suffering. So there's avidya, which is ignorance, and that's the chapter that you read, where
ignorance causes suffering. I don't necessarily need to describe why. And we all know that if there's something we don't know, it can potentially harm us or other people.
Sorry to interrupt you there, but just like I want to throw in for my Stoic fans out there.
Yes.
I always forget who they are, but because there's so many amazing ones. But I think it's Seneca. We suffer more often in our minds than in reality.
Yes.
We suffer more often in our own imagination than reality.
Yeah.
And I think that is just kind of like the perfect
yeah.
wrapping for what you're talking about.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, we create scenarios in our mind. Why? Because we think it's going to help us cope better. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's psychotic. Like
we're catastrophizing everything. Yeah,
absolutely. And it's never, to me, I compare it to this. Anything I visualize in my mind, Tori always tells me I have this bad habit of romanticizing a trip, and I'm always disappointed. I'm always disappointed. And not to sound like an a-hole, but not disappointed in him, but I'm always disappointed because it's not as good as it was in my mind. Your
imagination's too good.
Right.
Rosie, bring it down a little bit. Come
right.
on.
Can you, I know, I'm like really trying to make the most, but it's the same thing with catastrophic events. And in fact, in the introduction, I talk about how I really go into the catastrophe when things are going well. Like when life is going really well, that's the moment where I'm like, oh, when is the other shoe going to drop?
Really interesting.
Like when is the bad stuff going to start? It's just another way to not keep you in the present moment. That catastrophe that we don't know, like there's no knowing. As much as psychics really believe that they can predict the future, take it with a grain of salt. I still really believe that we're here designed to live in this experience. And although the mind wants to create scenarios for you and create plans, the mind wants to be anywhere else but in the present moment.
Is this another one of the afflictions you're talking about? Is this one of the
Okay,
five?
so the next affliction, I would say that's kind of tied into all of them.
Okay.
The second affliction is ego, right? So our small s self, let's call the big S self as the soul, the sort of abiding eternal force that we are. The small self is like, what's your sign? What do you do for a living? When I ask
how I label you, how I put you in a box, like or if even ourselves.
Yeah, like if I were to say, Chase, who are you? Am
I going to reply?
Yeah.
Damn. See, I would immediately just go to I'm a podcaster. I say conscious creative.
Okay, but that's a character. That's something that you do.
I'm a Libra.
Yeah, that's a sign, right? But see, anything that you say is a category. It's all, who are you, right?
I'm someone who is relentlessly in pursuit of optimal performance, mind, body, and soul.
Yeah, that is still something that you're doing. It's an intention.
Damn. All right.
Right? But if you think about it, you really ask yourself, like, who am I? I can't remember which of the Stoics said this or if it was a Buddhist teaching, so I apologize to my friends out there. You can correct me.
Someone much older and wiser than both of us.
Someone much older and much wiser. But it's like, it was Buddha that was asked the question. Again, correct me if I'm wrong. But the answer was no one. I am no one. And if you think about it, it's like, okay, if I'm no one, then I'm everyone.
Interesting.
But I'm not saying that that's the answer. I'm just saying like that question is the eternal question. Who am I? Who am I?
It's funny you say this. I was actually just listening to a Huberman Lab podcast, Andrew Huberman, and he had a guest on there talking about the use of psychedelics for everyday health, but particularly mental health and emotional health and well-being. And he was referencing, it sounded like a personal friend or colleague of his who was this longtime respected, highly decorated Navy SEAL guy. And he said the two most powerful words in the human history are I am. Because the words that immediately follow I am are immediately going to define you, describe you, put you in a container, are your belief system about how you view the world, how you live in the world, how you act, how you think, how you do everything. It's funny timing.
Yeah.
I literally was just listening to this yesterday.
Yeah. Most of the time there's a Sanskrit mantra that is the same. Is so hum, and it's like so hum. And when we're doing any type of like deep work and we're chanting this mantra, it's so interesting how the mind wants to fill in the blank. That's the point.
It can't stand nothingness. Yeah.
No, it's like, I am. The mind's like, what? I am what? Who am I? That's why it's, who am I? Oh, I'm a Cancer. I'm a native LA person. No, that's where I'm from. That is not who I am. And so I think that, we can get into the nuisance of ego and self, but those are also afflictions of the mind, because the more that you identify yourself with this box, that will cause suffering. Why? Because change is inevitable. And what's going to happen when you're no longer that person?
Yeah. If this is who I am now,
right.
If anything ever butts up against that.
Exactly.
Boom.
What happens? Identity crisis, midlife crisis, you
question relationships, your job,
everything. So that is the second affliction. The third and fourth are attraction and aversion.
Okay.
So it's like, what I want more of, give me more. I only want positive vibes only, no toxic negativity, just positivity.
I think I've shopped in that crystal store.
Yeah.
Melrose. That sounds familiar.
No, I'm not. And not to, badger my toxic positive friends, but I like the balance, and so the aversion is, so it's basically what I want, give me more of. The aversion is what I don't want, give me less of.
Okay.
And so again, those two will cause suffering. If you just want more of what you want, the scales are going to be tipped, right? Same thing with aversion. Your scales are going to be tipped. If I'm averted to a certain belief system, a certain political party, guess what? What's going to happen? Mm-hmm. I then now don't see the other for being who they are.
Wow. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. You're literally building a blind eye to the rest of the world.
Right. And I think that that's such a huge problem that we're facing today, is like, we don't have the capacity nor the bandwidth to allow somebody else to be human, have a human emotion. And I'm not saying to turn a blind eye to somebody being hateful or ignorant. I'm saying, how can we connect on a deeper level? How can you open and broaden your aperture to let the light in, right? To be able to take in whatever's present there for you. What can you learn from? How can this experience broaden your periphery? How can this broaden your landscape of life? We don't enter into situations that way. We enter them being like, I don't want to hang out with this group, or, oh, this person annoys me, I'm not going to go to that event, or I don't feel like talking, or I am just
sorry I'm late, I didn't want to come.
Right, exactly. And the last affliction is fear of death. Abhinavesha is called in the sutras, and obviously that one's pretty self-explanatory. We have a fear. I mean, you see it in LA. You see people walking around Beverly Hills all day long with the fear of death, with trying to preserve as much of their youth as they possibly can. And ultimately, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, like, more power to you. You want to do whatever you want. I'm all about it. Whatever's going to make you feel good.
In pursuit of your happiness.
Yes.
Go for it,
Do you, boo. Like, totally into it. But at the same time, for me, the reflection is everything that we do. I mean, I do as much as I can to try and be as healthy as I can, because I want to live an optimal life. But at the same time, it's like, I'm getting older, and
you look great.
You want to,
killing it. Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, that's, part of that same fear of death.
Really, really big lessons in there. But at the same time, at least for me, they're the most obvious lessons. And the more and more I've gone down the rabbit hole in a lot of different ways of personal development, physical activity, mindfulness, nutrition, wellness, all the things, we learn all these different ways. We listen to great conversations like this one. We read amazing books like yours. We go to these conferences. We do all of the work. We have the best workout ever. We sign up for all the things. But then at the end of the day, I just keep getting smacked in the face of it is the most simple things, most obvious things that Stoics, Buddha, all these great philosophers and thinkers of all of time, like we can go back and look at this stuff thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago. And that's another reason why I love Stoicism so much, is because it's these principles that have quite literally lasted the test of time. Thousands, tens of thousands of years old that applied then, damn sure apply now. But in some ways, in my opinion, like they were way ahead of their time. Some of the things that I read, Seneca, Epictetus, just these little blurbs that come out, I'm like, holy shit, like, was this written for here and now? And also, why are we trying to make a mountain out of a molehill? Wow. There's my Virginia shining through.
That's fine. That's fine. I got to bring it.
Mountain out of a molehill. When it comes to trying to make our lives better, I guess what I'm trying to say is, can we get better by simplifying these things and just going back down to these kind of core principles you're talking about?
Oh, 100%. And to me, and I love the way that you just articulated that, because
molehill.
Yeah, molehill. Well, my mom and my sister they lived in Texas. My little sister were in Texas for many, many years. And so I can definitely put on the Texan accent for sure. Or the Southern, Yeah, everything that you said, I think that's just part of our nature. We like to make things complicated, and we're so not complex. We're not that complicated. I think the more that we simplify our life, the more fulfilling it can be. You think about the simplicity of just sitting and staring at nature and disconnecting from social media. We've just become so conditioned with filling time and space. And the reason why it's so poignant now, especially with the Stoics, is because think about all the time that they had. These men, they had
nothing but time all the time
to discuss and think and to come up with these philosophies. And we don't have that luxury. Or I shouldn't say that. I mean, a lot of people don't have the luxury of doing that.
We've sabotaged that luxury.
Yeah, we've filled it with things and technology and Instagram pictures and externalized things that keep us from the truth of our own self. I mean, if you had to describe joy is not an externalized substance. It's something that we feel inside. So why is it that we believe that we need externalized things to create that feeling, where we can have the feeling now? We can have the happiness now. We can feel the fulfillment now. But we still believe that it's not until I have the right relationship, or I have the house, or I have the career, or I have the New York Times bestseller, or I have this or that or whatever, that list will continue to grow and it'll continue to change. I believe for myself, and I know that my friends and people that I've talked to, I think back to the things that I believed would fulfill me 10 years ago. And I'm so grateful that they didn't happen now.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right? Like how many things 5 years ago that you really wanted that you're like, man, I dodged the bullet.
Hell, even just a year ago. I mean, because if you're truly on the path to making your life better, I believe that's a daily process. And so if you are not different, and even just the smallest way today than you were yesterday, then why would the things that you want still be the same? You know, they might be. I mean, I still have my dream car in mind that I've been in love with for like 8 years. That's not going away anytime soon, but just how I want to look, how I want to feel, where I want to go, the people I want in my life, like all these kind of things, like they grow and evolve, and they don't go away. They just become more clear because I develop clarity in my life and the path that I want. Yeah.
And I want to speak to the power of attraction in that, what you're saying, because I believe it's okay to have goals. You know, I'm not saying, don't have externalized goals of things that
we should.
We should. Absolutely. We should. I don't like to should on people, but it's good to have externalized goals. I think what I have found to be the most helpful when it comes to manifesting or attracting things into your life is to really put yourself in the position of right now, we're going to leave the studio and you're going to get in that car. What does it feel like? Like, what does it feel like right now? That car's parked right outside of this store.
I just got excited.
Okay.
I just got excited.
Yeah. His whole entire demeanor just changed just now. And he's laughing and smiling.
Just thought about everything.
Yeah. And so he experienced that surge exactly the same. And if we had a neuroscientist here, they could measure his brain. And I guarantee.
We did last week. Shout out Wave Neuro.
Oh, nice.
Literally measuring brain waves.
Yeah. Well, it'd be cool to sort of have that, that experience where you can see what's lighting up in you now. And when you do get that car, like, is there going to be a similarity? Will it be different? And I really believe that that's where the power of attraction really comes to life and to fruition. And I'm all about it. You know, I can get woo, I can get scientific, but to me, that's where the magic of really creating that fulfilling life. And just going back to what you said, going to all the conferences and learning from all the people. And sometimes you might still feel like incomplete, or you don't feel fulfilled, or you feel like you've created complexities in your life. I think it's important for us to go through different epitaphs of life and for us to have these experiences, because then we can appreciate the good stuff.
Absolutely.
So much more. And when it comes to attracting the things that you want into your life, I really do believe that the more in alignment with the frequency you are of happiness, or what you perceive as happy, the easier that will come to fruition. And if anything, it's just going to create a deeper sense of relaxation and anchoring in your mind and in your body.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. I have another question for you as we're kind of getting towards the end here, but if memory serves, you said did you have any questions for me?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yes, please.
I wanted to return the favor.
Yeah. Thank you. I was curious for you, you know, when I'm talking about having that self-anchoring of radical love, I'm curious for you, like, what does that look like for you? Do you have that same sort of anchor point? Obviously for me, like, knowing your story, obviously your audience knows your story of your journey and how you got to where you are. And then the second is, what would you consider is radical wisdom for Chase?
So I guess if you would have asked me that question a year ago, hell, maybe even just like 6 months ago, I think I would have had a really different answer. And the last, I will say, like 4 to 6 months have been the most intense of that's funny that chimed in. Been the most intense, deep, internal work. Just when I thought that I was well enough, I came face to face with a lot of things really through the pandemic of just questioning, quite literally, like what we were talking about earlier with the whole paradoxical stuff. And I guess that anchor, true to my story, I would have said, well, it was my father. In a big way, it still is. But the journey that I've gone through now has really, 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 really helped me realize in many altered state of consciousness experiences and very alert and aware, fully conscious experiences that it's been me the whole time. And so it was just kind of like, I'll say really how I define it as getting finally into the acceptance phase of grief and realizing that in letting go of him, letting go of this trauma and working through this trauma, that's okay. And there was so much fear in that if I let that go, if I finally move on, what is that going to do to me? What is it going to leave for me? What's on the other side of that? And I realized I'm on the other side of that. And I've been building up and I've been working and all these things to get me ready to be here at this moment, to finally stop building a life. I just defined it earlier as moving forward in life and building while still just like adding another link on a chain to a ball and anchor, which sounds really weird to say about a deceased family member, but that's what I was doing. And so now I've been able to let that go more or less, and realize like that anchor has been me the whole time. It's just now it's, I guess, kind of been passed from him to me, so to speak.
Yeah. Like what kind of wisdom do you think your dad would tell you now?
He would probably tell me in his own unique way. He would have been like, literally, he would say something like, "You knucklehead, you've had this in you the whole time. Like, I've been telling you this shit your whole life." Like, literally, probably that would have been it. Man, a few words for sure. Probably would have used knucklehead too. But yeah, he would have just been like, "This is what I instilled in you the whole time." And like, thanks for like keeping me along the journey, but also you're good, man. Like, you're good.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that so much. I mean, to be able to still connect to that, and I'm sure you often do. I always like to ask people that have had somebody very close to them pass away, especially somebody like a parent or a sibling, or, you know, anybody that you're really close with. I'm a big spirit guide believer.
Yeah,
so
I know,
for me, I love to hear that. And one of the things I always say is that anytime I'm in a state of fear, my mantra is, fear is temporary, love is eternal. And when I can anchor into that love, that feeling, somebody that I know that has passed, or that energy, I can just call them in and say, like, I don't have the strength right now, but can you help me? And most of the time, that energy comes, you know. And I feel like for you, even from the moment that we met, like, I feel like I know your dad, you know, because it just feels like the love that he has for you still is very present, and you definitely carry that with you. And it informs every step of your life, every move you've made. Like, the energy of him is just so powerful. I mean, there's been times where I think I've voice noted you, like, what was that thing your dad said about Ever Forward? I need to hear it right now. In fact, you know, I should email you this, but there was a portion in the book where I talk about that. And I'm writing about this, the energy, right, that we can sort of plug into. And as I was writing, that's when I sent you that voice note. I'm like, what did he say?
I remember this. No shit. Really? You were writing?
Yeah, I was writing.
Wow.
So there's some of your dad's energy in that.
Papa Chewy channeled into the book.
Yeah, that's right. Papa Chewy, Baby Chewy, and then my little my little chew bug. So for the people that don't understand what's happening right now.
What are you talking about?
So I had my best friend, my Shih Tzu, whose name was Chewy. Chewbug, Chewbacca. He had many names.
I'm sure.
Chucifer. He had very many names. He was a rescue. He was like my bestie. When I moved to Portland, he basically was my only friend. I know that sounds so sad.
It's real life.
Yeah, but that dog got me through so many, many, I don't know, like really hard moments. And he passed away, and so much of his energy helped me sort of go through this book writing process, especially the chapter on grief, where I'm talking about, grieving and loss. And
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, to wrap it all up, this cannot have come at a better time. Ever Forward. I've asked you this before. I'm going to have your previous episodes on the show, down in the show notes for everybody. But now here we are in a different season of our life, and on the cusp of this new great work. What does that mean to you? What does Ever Forward mean to you? How do you live a life ever forward, Rosie?
God, this is such a great question. And this is also another reason why I love you so much. And I love the podcast. And I'm such an Ever Forward fan, you know?
Love you too. Thank you so much.
So to me, Ever Forward is really like the only way to live life. I mean, there is no other way. I believe that there is just this anchoring force that I talked about earlier, that radical resilience, that radical wisdom, that radical love. And that's what I believe Ever Forward is. It's that eternal presence of love, that fuel that continues to move us forward, even when we feel like we don't have a flashlight or don't know where to go. That's what Ever Forward is.
I love it. Thank you so much. Love you. Congratulations again on the new book. We'll have that down for everybody to check out. Rosie, it's always a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome.